Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Deepika Chamuli, a psychologist and a clinical hypnotherapist and founder and director of Speaking Cube Online Mental Health Consulting Foundation. Today, it is a second episode of our virtual podcast on trauma management and happy relationship. And I welcome our two guests. Our first guest is Dr. Neil Cobrin, the founder and president of Academy of Mindful Psychology, California, one of my mentor and my guide. And Sir has done a lot of work on mindfulness. He's a pioneer in the field of mindful psychology and has been associated with various renowned organizations. He has decade of experience in mindfulness and integrating mindfulness in day-to-day life. I welcome you, sir, for the podcast, and it is a pleasure to have you on this platform.
Thank you so much for including me. It's a pleasure to see you as usual. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
And our second guest is Dr. Anita Chauhan. She is one of my friend and holding a position of head of the department psychology, Shulini University, Solon. She has a decade of experience in teaching as well as counseling. So I welcome you, Dr. Anita, on this
Thank you so
platform.
much. Thank you so much, Dr. Deepika.
So we have certain questions that have been collected via various sources. So our creative team has done a good job, and there are certain questions that have been put across from the young adults. So let's talk about these questions and just have a candid conversation on these issues which are not petty issues, but actually the very, very, very important issues as far as a society is concerned. So the first question here is, considering the fact that psychologists have been witnessing a rise in the number of childhood trauma cases, would it be fair to assume that marriage as an institution has a role to play in it? So what is your opinion, sir? Is the most common question that we have come up with.
Well, I mean that's an interesting question, whether marriage itself has a role in it. Um, I think one can assume relationships has a role in it. So I make the distinction between relationships and marriage. I mean, marriage is a construct. It's a legal binding contract, but the key element, of course, is the nature of the relationship between two individuals. And I think when you talk about childhood trauma, it certainly can play what I guess I would call a conditional role in the scenario of trauma or abuse. But the reason I make the distinction that it's conditional is that you have to look at essentially the mental health of the perpetrator and how those conditions will affect that scenario that could possibly promote the kind of trauma that we're talking about. So, I mean, it's sort of, if you look at it from a Buddhist tradition, and you consider something like dependent origination, right? Dependent origination basically is, a principal concept of Buddhism that says all things arise given the conditions of the scenario that it's operating in. I've said for many years, every behavior must be viewed within the context of the behavior. Everything is contextual. So, of course, if you think about it that way, marriage or relationship creates a contextual environment that obviously will promote trauma and abuse in certain situations. That's my perspective about it.
Yes, absolutely, sir. Absolutely. And I do agree that yes, dependent origination is actually very important. So there are two important things that Buddhist philosophy is all about. Impermanence, the nature of impermanence. Everything is impermanent, and there is dependent origination. Correct. So absolutely, I do completely agree with you. What is your opinion, Dr. Anita, on the same? What do you feel about it?
Well, I feel I agree with Sir, but I feel that the family dynamics they also play an important role because they can contribute to the child's environment as well as the experiences that he or she has. And apart from that, there are other factors also which play an important role in um, whether the child experiences trauma or not, like the socioeconomic status of the individual, then the parental mental health, and the kind of exposure that the child has. I mean, exposure to violence or the other family conditions that determine his the child's resilience level also. And so yeah, family environment, the marriage, it like the parents their relationship with each other, it actually influences the um, trauma experiences that he or she has. But apart from that, if the caregivers uh, are having a supportive like giving a supportive environment to the children, to the child, then despite from the marriage, the kind of marriage that is there between the parents, it can the child can learn to be secure and safe. So yeah, this is what I feel.
Absolutely. There are a lot of factors, but at the end of the day, when we talk about the word holistic, I believe that spirituality encompasses everything, every dimension, every arena. So if we try to inculcate spirituality, a bit of spirituality in the upbringing of the child or parenting of the child, then probably we will be able to help them to have a better coping mechanism. Because this is what I have seen. I've been associated with a lot of Buddhist organizations, and also there are Jaini organizations and Hindu organizations. And this is what I have seen, that the resilience is very high uh, when it comes to the spiritual aspect. So anybody who is following one or the other aspect of spirituality, it's meditation or anything else, this resilience factor is very high, and hence the coping mechanisms are very high. And
Mhm.
they do not take trauma as trauma, rather they take trauma as an opportunity. Definitely they experience a trauma, definitely they feel certain negative emotions, but it doesn't prolong. So this is what I have seen. What do you think about it, sir?
Well, it's interesting because you shift the focus now, right? So the focus from essentially the conditions of trauma, and I want to make one comment about this when you talk about marriage. Frequently, trauma takes place within the extended family environment. So it may not simply be the couple relationship, but frequently it extends to a larger network, whether it be aunts and uncles or whether it even be within the social structure of the marriage. So I think that's an important element to also consider. Now, when you talk about resilience, that's a very interesting question. And frankly, that's the key question. There's no question about it. And I would agree with you 100% that an individual who has, whether, this word I think is overused, at least in the West, I was going to say a spiritual practice. I'm not so aligned with the word practice as I am aligned with the idea of a spiritual philosophy and what I call a spiritual relationship. I find that the more an individual is able to embrace spirituality and the larger nature of essentially being, the more resilient they can be. It's the small self that suffers
Correct.
tremendously, you know.
Correct. Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. So the large self is one that understands that. I love this quote. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having human experience. And I think when you can really embrace that, it certainly can help create again an environment of greater resilience. So I agree with you completely. And I have more to say about that, but I'll pause for a moment.
Yes, thank you, sir. So moving on to second question, which is several theories have pointed out the fact that experiences during our early childhood shape us in our adult lives. To what extent is that claim true in our opinion? So people want to know about it. It is basically the young adult crowd who are interested in this particular question. So
So
yes, please. So over to you, sir.
yeah, there's no doubt. There's completely no doubt that it's, one of, if not the most influential elements. I think I'm going to create a larger picture here, if I can, to really drive this point home. So we come into this universe 100% dependent and 100% vulnerable. We have no ability whatsoever as an infant for self-care, for self-survival. And I often say, contrast our beginnings with the beginnings of something like the sea turtle. The sea turtle is 100% self-sufficient. It knows how to hatch out of the egg. It knows how to climb out of its, dirt pile. It knows to turn to the ocean and actually move in the direction of the ocean, and knows how to survive once it's in the ocean. 100% able to do so. Its only threat are predators. The human animal has none of that, zero. So it is a completely vulnerable state to be in. So it's dependent on its environment, its caretakers, to provide a sense of security, of stability, of safety. It's all about safety, right? There are only two emotions: anxious, non-anxious, good, bad, safe, not safe, right? There are variations on those things. So early on in our life, we need the environment to let us know that we're safe. Trauma undermines that completely, destroys that. And one feels completely unsafe and completely vulnerable. And that sets the tone for the rest of a person's life. Now, what we do about that, we can talk about that a little bit later. But in terms of the impact is overwhelming. If you break an arm at age 2 and it heals poorly, that's what you're dealing with for the rest of your life. Now, it's not to say there may not be remedies later on in life, but I think it's really important to understand the impact of trauma in particular at an early age.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. And what is your opinion, Dr. Anita?
Yeah, even I believe that the childhood experiences they do shape the personality of an individual. Because there are many theories also in psychology, like attachment theories and all, in which the secure attachment, which Sir also mentioned about, Secure attachment, if a child has a secure attachment with the caregivers, then he or she will be um, like focusing more on, like, that person will be having more self-worth and a sense of trust would be developed during his childhood, and that would influence his or her relationship, future relationship. So yes, childhood experiences do play an important role, and the overall development, it is not only the attachment, but there are other areas also, like cognitive, emotional, um, psychosocial development, and the behavioral patterns that he or she developed, that are all shaped in the childhood. So yeah.
Absolutely. And since we are having a candid conversation and it is not a purely psychologist conversation, so I would like to share one incident from my own life. I was 6, 7 years old, and I had a short height. I'd still have a short height. And you will not believe, my grandmother, she was a very positive person and she was very tall. Everybody in my family was tall, and I had short height. And I was crying one day, I am the shortest person at home, and there are so many in the whole joint family. I'm the only one who is short. You know what she told me when I was 6? It was just 6, 7. I remember it very clearly. She told me, "You are tall, you are short. You can see I'm tall and I have backache. So there are pros and cons of both short and long height. So don't take your height as a negative aspect. See, those who are short heighted, they look younger. See, this is the aspect she uh, showed to me. And then the second thing, anybody who is short heighted is very intelligent. So you have to focus on your intelligence. You don't have to focus on your height, right? And then she used to restructure my cognitive patterns. What was the height of Lal Bahadur Shastri? I used to say he was 5'2". What was the height of Hitler? He was short. What was the height of Mussolini? See, he used to take all names of the legends, be good or bad, and then she used to tell me, see, don't pay heed to what they have done, but pay heed to the intelligence, pay heed to the kind of work they have done. So you have potential. So she basically associated my height at that point in time, associated my height in not a bad term, but she associated with a good emotion and a good trait, which was intelligence. So when I entered the school, always people used to say, "Oh, you had short height." I never took it as bully. I used to feel so proud in it. Oh, I am short heighted, I'm intelligent. And I used to say that, so what? I am short heighted, I'm intelligent, right? And this is how I never faced any kind of bullying. But when I listen to the narration of a lot of stories, right? Somebody told me tall, somebody told me short, somebody told me fat, and this and that, right? So it is bullying nowadays. But if I look back, when I was bullied, I never perceived it as bully. Rather, I was able to give a solid reply, a solid response to those bullying statements. So it is the perception that changed.
Mhm.
So to a child of just 6, 7, what she could have told at that point in time, what she could have explained and described at that point in time. So she did her maximum at that point. She instilled in me that, okay, if you're short heighted, it's fine, but you can be intelligent, you can be a good human being slowly and gradually. And when I became 20, she told me, see, it is not important. Your height is not important. Your looks are not important. What is important is your aura, your personality. And your personality and aura will be defined by your goodness, will be defined by your good heart. So you need to have a good heart. So this is a kind of cognitive restructuring that she has done with associations. So I think if as a parent we can include these kind of associations, it was just an example, certain associations if we can do, which a child can understand, then probably we are able to restructure the negative patterns, transform the negative patterns into positive one, and it affects the behavior definitely. But what is your opinion, sir?
On this very interesting story, it's interesting because it has several factors to look at. The first factor is, why would it trouble you to be short? Just as why would it trouble a child to be fat? Right? So, what's interesting about the question, which is obvious, is our intense need to be accepted. We don't want to be excluded. So, when we deviate from the mean, when we feel that there is something that distinguishes us, if you will, negatively, we feel extremely vulnerable. And that vulnerability can be very, very intense. So, what your grandmother did was basically shift the emphasis at an early age to ultimately make you feel less vulnerable. She said, okay, you might be short, but you know what? You're smart. And smart and intelligence is valued. I think this is a really important word I just used. This idea of value. When a child is traumatized at an early age, they don't feel valued. They feel less than. This is an interesting way of thinking about it. And whether this cognition actually exists or not at that age is irrelevant. But the equation basically is if I was of value, I would not be abused, essentially. I would not be treated in this manner. This is why their self-worth plummets. Or you can, whether you say plummets or fails to develop in a strong way, either way, that's the impact of trauma. So there's no question that cognitive restructuring, and the earlier that occurs, the other thing I'll say is we have to imagine, and I'll just pick a number, in the first 18 years of our life, we are a forming, developing being. Now, we are a forming, developing being throughout our lives. But the degree to which we're open and vulnerable early on is so dramatic that it's very easy to influence that which is not fully formed yet. So if you can do a corrective experience like your grandmother did at an early age, that's far more effective than later on in life.
Right, absolutely. And this is what I feel, that this is because of all my experiences and all childhood cognitive restructuring that was done by my grandmother and my mother. This is how I am now. So it shapes your personality, it shapes your personality traits, it shapes your thought process at the deeper level, and you become what you are, because there are opportunities in every experience.
Well, you
We
just
just have to open our eyes and see.
gave an example of resilience. That's what creates resilience. Resilience is essentially, I'll make this in a very simple way, negative followed by positive. So for you are questioning and feeling emotionally challenged, if you will, regarding your height. And your grandmother and your mother supported the opposite. It's like building a muscle. You tear it down and you build it up. That is what resilience is.
Absolutely.
If you don't build it up, you have no resilience, or little resilience, I should say. That is
Absolutely.
the problem with trauma.
Yes. So, with this, let's move on to the next question. So, Dr. Anita, this is the question for you. You can't remove anything from your patient's past, and this makes it difficult for us therapists to assist our clients. What kind of approach do you take in your practice to overcome this difficulty?
So yeah,
This
the
question has come from a budding psychologist.
okay, the when we are dealing with the patient, I mean the clients, so the therapy before starting with the therapeutic interventions and all, we usually like we create an environment in which the person feels safe. The person is able to communicate the deepest issues that he or she is facing, and also that person is validated, heard, and empowered. Right. So these are the basic things that we do in therapy and the sessions that we take with the patients. I mean the clients, and I there was a student who used to come to me with some like she was had faced a trauma in her life because she had lost her sister, and she blamed herself for this instance. She said that it was just because of her that her stupidity, her uh, um, I mean, she was not able to take care of her, so she passed away. But then, and in the initial period, she was so quiet. She did not speak. She used to come to me. She used to sit in front of me for um, half an hour or so, and sometimes for an hour also. But she never spoke anything. But later on, she started expressing herself, and she told me that she was so guilt ridden because of the trauma of her sister's death. And and later on now like she's passed from the university. Now she's working elsewhere. She's taken up a job also. So now she is actually able to like she's still connected with me, and she is still like she's able to face all the difficulties in her life. I mean in a proper way, in a positive sense. So this is what I could do. So the things which I used I mean the therapies that which I used with her was cognitive behavior therapy, because it was the uh, cognitive distortions that she was having, and also she was so I mean, guilt ridden. So I worked in this area. So now I helped her. I tried to help her in developing self love and also indulge in self care practices. So, yeah, so like these kind of things I try to practice with the students and the clients to come to me.
Yes, absolutely, and it was wonderful. And these kind of clients do come off and on, right? And everybody, as far as trauma is concerned, I cannot say that I have not faced trauma. Everybody has faced trauma. Trauma is nothing but just down phase of your life, but the intensity differs. The perception of that intensity also differs based on your cognitive maps, based on your thought process, based on your upbringing, based on your so many other factors which are present in the environment. And yes, definitely therapeutic approaches help, but at the end of the day, the key word was self love. You just mentioned at the last, right? Self love. So if you love yourself, if somebody starts loving the self, the problems are all over. You are the strongest person in the world, then you can do anything. So the what I feel is the only difference between a successful person and a failure is a successful person loves the self, because the definition for success differs from person to person.
Mhm.
For me, it is different. Probably for Neil sir, it is different. For you, it is different. It is different based on our needs, based on our motives. But at the end of the day, if I am loving myself at actually 100%, then I'll be successful in that area. I'll get it. But if I'm a failure, that means I have not loved myself.
Which is the
What do you think,
cornerstone.
sir? What do you think?
which is the cornerstone of trauma.
Yes.
Trauma
Yes.
undermines self-love. Trauma, early childhood trauma, impacts the sense of worth and love. Whether it's logical or not, the child often feels that they are not valuable enough not to have experienced what it is they experienced. So it undermines self-love. It undermines self-worth. And what
Correct.
Dr. Anita said, I think, is really crucial. One must provide a container of safety and connection to ultimately resolve the issues of trauma. You know, during 9/11 in America, we learned something. And what we learned is we sent all these trauma experts to New York City to help with the victims of that tragedy. And their approach was, which was typical at the time, to sit down with a client, with a patient, with an individual who suffered this trauma and said, okay, tell me about the trauma. And that just accelerated the trauma. That further overwhelmed. I mean, what people needed was simply a feeling of complete safety. They needed to be held, whether literally or figuratively, for quite a long period of time, saying, you're safe, you're safe, you're safe. You have to, trauma work is a slow process. You can't jump to the end. You really have to build a container of safety and connection and caring and validation. All those things take time. And then from that place, you can begin to challenge, you can begin to reveal, if you will, the trauma as best as they understand it. And piece by piece, you can sort of de-emphasize it, deactivate it. I think it's very interesting when you look at trauma work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's move on to the next question because we have just touched the topic of self-love. So the next question is to you, sir. Love is dynamic. Marriage is settlement. They can't go together. What are your views on the statement?
Okay, say the statement again.
Love is dynamic. Marriage is settlement. They can't go together. What are your views on this statement? Do you
So
think so?
the
Marriage is
second part,
settlement and
no,
love is dynamic.
no, I don't think marriage is settlement at all. Not at all. We completely misunderstand the dynamics of love. So let's start there. If you walk into a card shop, you want to buy a card for someone. These cards basically say, I love you, I love you, I love you. The idea being that what is most essential about love is to feel we are loved by others. Now, of course, that's crucial. It's particularly crucial in early childhood. You talk about secure attachment. That's what creates secure attachment. But what I believe is ultimately we have and I use this word purposely, a desperate need to share our love, to find, if you will, an object that we can really provide our love. This is why we love our pets so much, right? We love our pets because they're a constant receptor of our ability to put our love out. They receive it with, unconditional response, if you will. So there's nothing more significant, in my opinion, than love, being a loving being. And I don't think marriage is a settlement. I think that's, again, it's about the dynamics of the relationship. If you found somebody that is open and available for you to give love, that's miraculous. That can continue throughout one's relationship in life. So I would say that that statement perhaps is not broad enough to really encompass the true dynamics of relationship.
Right. I also agree with your point of view, sir, and completely agree with that if you have a partner who is emotionally available to you. So, most important is emotional availability. Most important is he should be able to understand you and you should be able to understand him. You need to have a compatible ground. When every time when these kind of couples do come to me, I always say, do not adjust and compromise in relationship. Give space. Give
Space,
space to breathe.
space,
Yes. So that,
navigation of space.
yes, that breathing space is important for both of you. So if that breathing space is there, there'll be no dearth of love. But if that breathing space is not there and you are continuously adjusting and compromising, then obviously you'll feel suffocated, you feel strangulated, you will want to come out of that relationship.
Absolutely.
So
We forget
yes,
two individuals, two separate human beings attempting to dance together, to communicate
correct,
together, to share, right?
correct.
Two separate, we're not trying to create, the same. Yeah, there's no question what you just said. I've said my whole career, one of the essential ingredients in a relationship is the navigation of space. Space to breathe, to be you, to be vulnerable with one another, definitely.
Correct. And what is your opinion, Dr. Anita?
Well, I totally agree with this that space is essential. Space to breathe is essential, and that would deepen the love between the two individuals, and then they can navigate the path of their life together. So yeah, I totally agree with both of you.
And there is one thing that I've understood from this question. Probably they are only talking about the physical love, which is not the actual love. Because when we love somebody, it can be a distant love. These are the emotions. This is the emotional inclination that you're talking about. And then when you are emotionally inclined, you will feel vulnerable with that person. You accept that person unconditionally. You accept even the weakness of the person unconditionally. So these are, I think, two separate things: physical plus emotional. We're talking about the holistic thing. But when we talk about, I have discussed this particular question, a plus topic also, a lot of times in my classes, wherein it comes that, yes, they confuse a lot between just a physical relationship and the concept of love. The concept of love is much deeper, I believe. No, don't you think so?
Oh, absolutely.
It is
It's
much more. It is much more.
right. And particularly when you are in love, right? So the process of being in love is, you're flooded with oxytocin. So there is nothing, more substantial in your life than the person to whom you're in love with. I mean, the idea of, having a physical relationship outside of that is just at that moment, really inconceivable. But I agree with you that these are two separate avenues. I'm really glad you said that.
Correct.
These are two
Correct.
separate avenues. One has to understand what the process of love really is about.
And what I feel is the only word for love is unconditional acceptance.
So,
Unconditional acceptance of yourself and of the other person as well. So there is no rejection. If there is unconditional acceptance, there is no rejection. There is only love. There's space for love. So with this, coming on to next question.
Wait,
Uh,
let me just say, if I could say, there's no such thing as rejection. Is what you said. There's goodness of fit, right?
yes,
If you change, goodness of fit is different than rejection. If you go for a job and they say no, thank you, it's oh, thank you very much. It's a poor fit. Okay, goodness of fit is
yes,
we
yes,
have to change the way we think about these things.
absolutely. Absolutely, sir. So the next question is, sir, how can I recognize triggers that worsen my trauma symptoms and what can I do to manage them?
Well, I think in a way there's a simple answer to that question. And the simple answer, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. So what's important about the concept is that we feel with our body. The body tells us immediately. Feeling is housed in the body. So the idea of recognizing triggers first start with how you feel. When you feel a certain way, it's the first indication that something is perhaps problematic if the feeling is negative. Let's just say it that way. You then have to be able to convert that into a cognitive evaluation, which is what's happening here. Why am I feeling this way? Now, we might not know the answer to that, but it's the first step in understanding what a trigger might be. Why was it when I walked into that building, I felt the way I felt? And I think this is a really important concept. I don't particularly ascribe to Freud's unconscious. The way I look at the unconscious is that we are essentially a vast network of associations. So we lead our life with thousands of neural connections through associations. So a trigger is essentially something that's associated a particular way. Understanding what those associations are. If at an early age I took a ruler, and smacked you with it over and over and over again, and 15 years later, someone showed you a ruler and suddenly your gut tensed, you might not have a memory of that, but it's through association as to why that feels dangerous. So it's spending time and understanding first the body's awareness and then analyzing what's going on in the moment that may be ultimately making you feel the way you're feeling. That's my response to that question.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your response. And Dr. Anita, what is your opinion on this aspect?
Um, yes, the body do responds, but then the second thing that we need to focus on is what am I feeling? Um, like sometimes anger is one of the emotion that a traumatized person gets. He or she might get triggered because of some instance in the life. So, and later on, that person might regret that there was nothing to be uh, so much angry of. The situation was not so. So, if the person is getting some kind of negative emotions, exaggerating certain aspects of his life, then again, a person has to look into it, that why is it happening with him or her, and also then um, conducting the therapist or like practicing self-care, love, following a routine and all. So these are things that a person can um, do if he or she is feeling I mean, feeling triggered by something.
Absolutely. And this is what I've seen in these many years of my service, by virtue of a lot of clients that come with this kind of problem. But what I've seen is a lot of people who face relationship issues, marital issues, and poor intimate relationship, poor emotional relationship. All these people are stuck in their past, and because of this, sometimes it is only the fragrance of perfume which is triggering them. Sometimes it is the color which is triggering them, color of or the interior of the household which is triggering them. So the small things. Even a plant can trigger them. So trigger can be anything for that matter, anything at the end of the day. And when a trigger comes, or when you experience any trigger in the present moment, it is only because of the shackles of your past. You are tied up. So the only thing I tell my clients to do is, see, you just need to cut the scissor and cut the cord. Pick up the scissor and cut the cord, and only you can do it. Nobody else can do it. And you can just cut the cord by only being in the present.
Absolutely.
Breathe in relaxation and breathe out your stress and tension. Be in your present, be with your present, and be for your present. And then everything will be like set right. So, a lot of marital issues, a lot of domestic violence, it's all because of the triggers. Sometimes the husband say, I don't like my wife because she acts like my mother. And sometimes the wife says, I don't like my husband because this particular behavior is just like my brother or just like the one who has abused me physically at that particular point in time. So I just don't like it. But at the end of the day, they are not discussing amongst themselves. That platform is not there. So it is happening only with the act of blaming. So first we need to absorb in ourselves. We need to understand our past. We need to understand the cause. And we need to understand our inner conflict. That yes, this is the inner conflict which is happening, which is just making me so frustrated, and which is why I am behaving this way or behaving aggressively. And then if we can do that, it's easy. Life is easy. Life has so many colors. There are only 7 colors, but there are n number of permutation and combination as far as the colors are concerned in the world, right? But why to ponder on only red, only white, only blue? And monotony, we human beings do not like monotony at the end of the day. We are colorful beings, and that's why we have different shades of emotions. Just experience. And one day I gave an example to one of my clients. I said, see, let's make your life very happy. I'm giving you 2 days. Let's make your life very happy. You're very happy. You have everything. You have everything which is making you a successful person. Will you be happy with those 2 days of your life? Then she said, no, I will not be happy. I said, what? Why you will not be happy? Right? I'm giving you 2 days which are like 100% absolutely successful days of your life. Then she said, monotony. I don't like monotony. Nobody likes monotony. When we don't like monotony, then why we are not loving the colors of emotions? I do not know. This is my perception. So we have to accept different emotions and just enjoy them. Some days definitely will be bad. It's okay. You can accept that. Some days will be good. You accept that. Some days will be average. Accept that. Because at the end of the day, nobody, no one of us liked staying at home during Corona. We had ample holidays, ample offs, and ample work from home. But nobody liked it. Nobody wanted themselves to be confined in a particular set routine. Because we human beings, we like colors. We like different colors. And we like this life to be explored. Isn't it, sir? What do you think?
Oh, I have much to say about this.
Yeah, please go ahead, sir. Please go ahead. 5 minutes.
Okay, but I actually really want to make sure I state this. If you look at trauma in relation to mindfulness, in a manner of speaking, they're opposing forces. So think of the next two things I would like to offer. One is you're watching a National Geographic about Africa, and you see the gazelles grazing in the field. And all of a sudden, one head goes up, and then another head goes up, and then a third head goes up. And before you know it, they're stampeding. And in the distance, you see the approach of the lioness, who then attacks fully, grabs one of the antelopes, and drags it into the bush. What do you see 5 minutes later? What you see, there's the antelope grazing again, calm and peaceful. That is not what happens with the human animal. The human animal becomes traumatized. And what's interesting about being traumatized is it exists in the past, not in the present moment. Okay, so that's statement number one. Now, statement number two, I love. I just have to tell a very quick story. It's a story about Buddha teaching his disciples. And a father comes very irate, very angry at Buddha, and yells at Buddha. And he says, "It's because of you that my son sits here meditating and listening to you instead of working and supporting the family." And he actually spits on Buddha and he storms out. Well, during the evening, he starts to feel very guilty. That was very poor behavior. So he goes back the next day, and Buddha is sitting teaching his disciples again. And the man, the father, says, "Will you forgive me?" And Buddha says, "No." And everybody's astonished. The man says, "Why would you not forgive me for what I did yesterday?" And Buddha looks at him and says, "That man that you spit on yesterday is no longer here. I'm here." You think about how profound that statement is. It takes time sometimes, you know? So the present moment is the only thing we have. There is no such thing as anything else. Anything else is simply an illusion.
Absolutely.
And people have a very difficult time really embracing that. So I agree with you completely. Those are my two stories.
And I also agree with you as always, sir. And what is your opinion, Dr. Anita? What's your opinion on it? Do you
Mm,
agree that people live in illusion?
yes, absolutely. We do. We do. At times, we also do that. We also live in illusion.
Absolutely. We
And
also do that.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it is not going back, which is important. It
Mhm.
is it is the pace, how fast you are coming back again to the present and staying there. So you have to stabilize yourself in the present. You'll definitely go back to revisit and visit, come back. But that coming back is important. So I don't want to be in the past. It's okay. And same goes to Neil sir and Dr. Anita. So we are in the present and just enjoying this moment. So now with this, we are coming to the last question. Are there any lifestyle changes or habits I can adopt to support my healing process? Over to you, sir.
Well, I think we've been talking about lifestyle changes. Absolutely. The key is groundedness. The key is centeredness. Trauma is a disempowering experience. So if it's a disempowering experience, what can one do to feel a sense of empowerment and agency and centeredness and calm? Anything that can help sort of materialize these experiences and feelings can help, if not overcome, trauma. That's a very simple, short statement, but I think if you consider those elements, that's what I really believe can be helpful. And as Dr. Anita said, forming a safe, vulnerable relationship where one can begin to explore the depths of their trauma can be so helpful. This study that's been published, there's a therapist who created a approach to working with trauma using MDMA. And what they did is they created an environment which both he and his female counterpart would work with people who've been traumatized. And they would utilize MDMA over the course of a 48 to 72 hour period. And they've had remarkable success because it creates a sense of attachment and intimacy. And they're able to explore, in a way, the trauma from a different source of the brain. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation of where trauma is stored versus what happens when you move away from that. So I would say, to summarize, is recognizing that the present moment is what you have, and to basically maximize your present day experience, calm oneself, center oneself, be in nature, be connected to other human beings. That's a pathway to healing.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And over to you, Anita. What are the last 2-3 statements from your side for changing the lifestyle?
I would just say that, as Sir also mentioned, being in the present moment, if we start practicing mindfulness, we'll be connected with our own selves, we'll be connected with the surroundings, and we will be able to overcome the negative experiences that we have had in our life, and we can make a better life for ourselves. So getting connected with ourselves and the other life experiences also that we have had, accepting them and moving on, is what I would say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Anita. And I would like to say that, see, post-trauma, we have traumatic experiences. There are always two pathways post-trauma. And it depends on you which pathway you want to select. One is depression and despair, and it is not going to give you anything. One is hope and resilience. And the key to hope and resilience is being in the present. So be with the present, full of hope and resilience. Enhance your resilience every day. Enhance your hardiness every day by 3 C's: challenge, commitment, challenge, and control. So if you can control the situation, it's absolutely fine. If you cannot control the situation, even after full commitment, take it as a challenge. And then there'll be no room for any kind of negativity. And this is what can be achieved by being in the present.
Mhm.
And we cannot achieve it by being in the past, because past is past, it's gone. And with this, we have come to an end of the second podcast, and hope everyone is going to enjoy it. Thank you so much, Neil, sir. We are in different time zones, and it's their early morning. And thank you so much, Dr. Anita. It's night over here. And thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, and I've really enjoyed communicating, dialoguing with both of you. So thank you so much. And your mass audience that I know you will have.
Yes.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much.